Welcome everyone to Beis Hashem and to this special day of Torah, and Torah of Sfas, really. It's a Panimi day. It's a day of the inner world, the inner workings of Judaism, and we should all realize that the inner workings of Judaism are like 1,000,000 times bigger than the outer workings, and the outer workings are overwhelmingly big. 613 commandments with 45,000 laws, and just all the discussion of those laws and books that you'd fill this entire room with, and you still didn't get to the inner Torah. So sometimes I ask people, what do you think's bigger, the inner Torah or the outer Torah? And people are like, they're not sure, because the outer Torah, meaning the Torah we learn, the revealed Torah, is so huge. But the funny thing is that, do you think there's a single law in the external Torah, meaning in the written Torah, or in the oral Torah that explains the written Torah, do you think there's one law there that doesn't have Kabbalistic secrets of what it's there for? Do you think there's any arbitrary law in the whole Torah? And the answer, of course not. Every single law in the entire Torah has secrets upon secrets upon secrets, which means if you do as much as click on any single law about, let's say, just what it means when Kohanim wash their hands, which the law would be that they should get their hand washed from the wrist down when the Kohen washes his hands. And if you take any one of those little laws, you'll wind up with like 5 weeks of Kabbalah to study for every one of those laws. So if we could fill this entire room with the written law of everything that's been written about what it takes to live as a Jew, including temple times, meaning everything, and you get all the oral law of what that's about, you'd have to fill this thing like probably 30, 40 times with just the inner Torah. And today's dedicated to the inner Torah. And this class is called The Revolution. As if someone who has heard me speak before, I speak on many, many subjects. So I appreciate if you're watching this on video or anything, you understand that the radical revolutionary things I'm about to say are not necessarily indicative of everything I say. Because this is going to be, what I'm going to say is going to be maybe hard to hear for people who run organizations. The revolution. Human consciousness goes between consciousness and unconsciousness. It has two modes, consciousness and unconsciousness. Like right now, as I look at you all, you're all looking pretty conscious, so that's pretty good. And there's often, you can go into what's unconscious and just kind of disappear. For example, I daven in Pins Karlim, where we do ecstatic prayer. We scream our prayers at the top of our lungs. And what you'll notice is everyone's getting more and more conscious throughout the entire davening. Yesterday, for example, on Shabbos, the Psukkah de Zimmer, by the time we got to Baruch Hu, was an hour and 35 minutes of screaming our heads off. And what happened was Shmoneh Esrei hit at the 2-hour mark. And when we were done with Shmoneh Esrei, you could see that everyone who was in the upper 2/3 of the room were in an extremely conscious state. Now, that entire time we were davening, the back third of the room is just people who were born Pins Karlin. And they're just kind of back there not knowing what to do with themselves, while everyone up front's just carrying on and on and on and on. And it's getting more intense, getting more intense, getting more intense. And so there's we're getting very conscious up there while people are kind of unconscious out there. It's easy for an organization or a population to become unconscious, because consciousness and unconsciousness doesn't just exist in the individual, but consciousness and unconsciousness can exist in a business. A business can go to sleep, and that's why you see that businesses generally go up and down, and then other businesses take them over. Organizations can get totally unconscious, and institutions can become totally unconscious. And there's certain things that lull them to sleep more than others. In life, everything is going between flow and structure. That was about consciousness. New chapter. Flow and structure. So, for example, the water inside this cup is flow. The cup is structure. Everything's happening between flow and structure. That's really all there is. Everything in this world is flow and structure. Chesed and Gevura. And not only that, but everyone in this room's personality is either flow or structure. Beis Hashem's kind of attractive to flow people. And, and I think Brisk probably attracts structured people a little bit. But people are generally either flow or structure. And if you're very flow, you have to obviously stretch very strongly towards the left to structure. And if you're very structure, you gotta stretch to the right to get some flow in your life. But once in a while, there's a human being that is both flow and structure. They're perfectly flow and perfectly structure. If they're intellectuals, they're called Das people. If they're interpersonals, they're called Tiferes people. And if they are instinctuals, then they're called Yesod people. But they're always managerial. They always run things. And every single institution around the world, every business is always built by that middle person. That middle person's the manager type. He's like 1 in 1,000 when it comes to Das. In human beings, he's probably like 1 in 400 if it comes to being Tiferes, and he's probably 1 in 100 if it comes to Yesod. And that's why you could have 400 people working on a construction site, but you only have one construction site manager who handles everything from all the structure of the intensely detailed, air conditioning, electricity wiring, which is very structured, to the pouring of cement, which is handled by flow guys. The flow guys are busy pouring cement, roofing, setting up drywall, and stuff like that. And so you got highly technical types, you got the non-technical brunt work types, and then you got the Yesod guy, who's got the big fat, 4-wheel drive truck with a cooler full of beers, for all the flow guys. And yet he understands all the structure. He's that middle guy. Now, every institution is formed by people who are in that middle place. And what happens is that they have a great idea, they create the idea, and then, people kind of rally around it because they really love the idea. So, for example, what's happening all over the world are places like Beis Hashem are showing up all over the world today because everyone's just had a little too much being pushed into structures that institutions are famous for. Institutions generally lend towards structure, okay? It's a system. In fact, everyone in this room grew up in an educational system. Although looking around, I think a few of you popped out of it at one point or another. Some of you look like it was younger than older when you were ejected. But it's called an education system. Does that sound like flow or structure? Which one? Structure. An education system. And systems have no room for souls, for spirit, for the human soul is totally flow. It's totally flow. While a system, an educational system, for example, would be structure. It doesn't have any room for that soul, for the human soul. It's built to be structured. It's got schedule. It's got class plan. It's got fit in or get out type of energy to it, and it really, really can kill the soul of a person. And a lot of you think that the soul it kills most is the flow soul. The flow guy is the one who gets killed in the system. No, they're not the ones that get killed. Why? Because they get ejected. They just automatically they just pop out of it. There's just only so long they will survive that place until it's the structure people. They're the ones who are going to be spending more time and money on therapy. You understand? Because their spirit didn't protect them. Because they were too well mated. They were too well mated to the structure aspect of that system. So what's happening now is that the ability to learn in a non-structured environment, the ability to learn in a judgmental environment where it's come one, come all, everyone is welcome, no matter what, is that's what's happening right now. And I recently was at I was in Williamsburg, and I had about 80 people in the room, and I asked them, they were young men, under 40, over 20, under 40, marrieds. And I asked them, please raise your hand. I would like to see when the last time any of you called a dayan for advice. I repeated myself 2 more times. And no one raised their hand. No one raised their hand. And the reason is because, nothing wrong with the dayanim. The reason is because there's a revolution going on. And we are inside that revolution. This is the revolution. And the beauty of the revolution is everyone's learning Torah, because that's all they wanted to do in the first place. And so what's happening is there's dayanim coming up amongst the ranks of the revolution. And you'll notice that the last stronghold that the system even has is only one last place. You think the dayanim don't notice? No one calls them anymore? You think the Beis Dins don't know about this? You think the Rebbes don't know that no one listens to them? You think they're not noticing this? Of course they're noticing this. And they've only got one last place to hold any power, and that power is just whether your kids can learn in their school. That's the last place. So everyone has 2 phones, and they got the phone for the school, and then they got their smartphone, and they're just, that's okay. You want us to jump through circus hoops to get our kids in school? We will. But meanwhile, in the revolution, there are amazing mechanchim. There's amazing mechanchim who are coming up the ranks of the revolution, and they're also individuals, as rare as they are, as I said earlier, people who are right down that middle kav, from Das to Tiferes to Yesod, who can build this for our children's generation. So we're really in a revolutionary time, but as I continue on, you're going to see that there's something much bigger at stake here, and there's something much bigger that has to get done. Today's the yahrzeit of Rav Noach Weinberg. Rav Noach Weinberg was my Rebbe, and that was, being as close as I was to Rav Noach and everyone else, all my colleagues who were as close to him, who were all like brothers because he was our father. Rav Noach used to say to us that the reason we haven't succeeded is because I'm alive. The reason we haven't succeeded is because I'm alive, meaning we haven't succeeded because you guys all think I'm going to do this. And what he was saying, and it used to scare us when he'd say that, because we were so afraid of the day that he would pass away. And I'm not sure if we're afraid because now we're going to go do it, or we're afraid that we won't do it. But what happens is we often lean upon our leaders. We lean upon our leaders as if they're going to somehow save us. But you'll notice in Judaism, there is no word for follower. We have like 20 words for leader, but not one word for follower. There's no word. They had to use like the word akev, like in social media in Israel, you follow someone lakev, like Yaakov. Like you follow after something, like you're on his heels. But there's no word in Lashon HaKodesh for follower, because what is a leader in Judaism? A leader is someone who creates leadership. And if we're wondering why the world looks the way it does, it's because we haven't stepped up, not because of our leaders not stepping. Our leaders did step up, but they can only do so much. And our job is to inspire leadership in everyone else. And so you build an institution. You build an institution and everyone rallies around it, and you got mostly structured people who are supporting the leader, who's right down the middle, and usually if it's a big institution, he's Das, which in the secular world would be a CEO of a company, or in the politics, he'd be a president of a state or a prime minister. And in the Jewish world, it'd be a Rosh Hashiva or a Rebbe. What happens often is the Rebbe dies. You can't live forever. or the Rosh Yeshiva dies, and there's suddenly this vacuum. And who do you think they choose, a flow person or a structure person to take over? Who are they going to choose, structure or flow? Of course, they go to the left and they take the structure guy. And they put a structure guy in place, and immediately that organization, that business, or that Torah institution, or that Chassidus dies right there. That's the death of it. To have a leader who is structure and is not that perfect balance between flow and structure, then the organization, it just simply dies right there. Yaakov Avinu was Tiferes. Yaakov Avinu was Tiferes. He was right down the middle, which means he owned both Netzach, oops, wrong way. I'm mirroring for you guys. He owned both Netzach and Hod. That fight with Esav, the fight with Esav, wrestling with the Sar Shel Esav, was Esav saying that my job will be to build the world. I'm going to build the world. Netzach's where the Nevuah is going to be. That's going to be the Torah. But I'm Esav. I'm here to build. I'm going for Manhattan, man. I'm going to build Los Angeles. I'm going to build every city in the world. I'm going to build the infrastructure. Hod is pure infrastructure. It's the frequency my voice is going through this room that's Hod. It doesn't have its own energy, and I send it out and it moves. It's hollow. It's Arna Kohen is just a pipe. He's just a pipe of frequency to Shemayim. Netzach's the content. Netzach's the Torah. And what did he do? He's pogeh. He injures Yaakov Avinu's left leg, the Gida Nashe, the sciatic nerve, which is the support of Yaakov Avinu, which is Torah. It's the support of Torah. And suddenly he says, you're not Yaakov anymore, because what was Yaakov? The one who will be Ma'akev, Esav's building. You're no longer the Ma'akev anymore. I'm now free to build. And you now are free to be Yisrael. You're now Yisrael. You're not Yaakov, the guy who prevents Esav. You're Yisrael. You're the world of Torah. And I'll build the infrastructure, and you'll build Yisrael, and then we're going to meet up at the end of days. Va'alu Moshim Ba'ar lishpot es ha'esav. V'haisa Hashem l'Hashem ha'melucha. And then will Hashem have melucha. Then we'll see Hashem's kingship in this world. It's brought down that in 1967, the Six-Day War, Rabbanan say that was when the Goyim started really listening to us. They just wanted to hear what we have to say. Of course, we forgot to say anything. But in 1967, the Six-Day War, it was on the sixth day of the sixth Sefirah. And then there was the Six-Day War. Literally on the sixth day of the sixth Sefirah was the Six-Day War. When we get back much of our biblical territory, we get back Har Habayis. Yisod Shabi Yisod was the Six-Day War. And the whole world's watching to see what we do. So first you have the state invite all the Arabs back in, because Arabs know what to do when someone conquers. Run! They ran. And of course, Moshe Dayan's like, no, come on back. Come on back, we love you, people. And they've been listening to us ever since. That's why you'll notice like 20 to 30, 40% of news stories is all about Israel. Problem is we keep mirroring their values, trying to show them that we're more liberal than, we've got exactly their values in mind. Instead, they're waiting to hear. Esav's waiting to hear Yisrael. Esav wants to hear Yisrael. And I can tell you, when I got to Eshet Torah some 33 years ago, when we were hearing the Torah that was makarvas to Yiddishkeit, as much as we were excited that we would become from, and as much as we were excited that we could get other Jews to become from, what we were really thinking the whole time, and I promise you this, all we were thinking the whole time is the world needs to know this stuff. The world needs to know this. And the Baal Tshuva movement literally started the Six-Day War. The whole Israeli scene happened, and then the American scene, they didn't know about the Israel scene, but what they did was they headed to India on the search for meaning. And those who know some of the characters of the around Israel are people who just, I don't know, they must have jumped out of a parachute on their way back to America, landed in Israel and became, Bali Tshuva after they, did their search in India. But that began the whole process. But the process we thought, so many people thought, was about McCarving Jews. I mean, no offense, guys, but we're a mess. This can't be about us. You have to be real about it. There's no way that history's boiling down to us. I mean, I see you all look pretty healthy and happy, but I mean, really, you're all like, like it's like everyone's in crutches and is down to like 2 limbs. There's no way that this is what it's all about. Like, there's just no way. With the majority of Jews who don't know, their knee from their elbow in Judaism. That's what it all boiled down to. That's what it all boiled down to a Chuck Schumer. I don't even know what his job is, but I don't think he's very Jewish. But I think he was born Jewish. Like, that's what it boiled down to. This is about the world. When someone complains to me about the Jews sometimes, recently I was at a meal and there was a soldier there complaining about the Haredim, and I said, as if you're such an exemplary Jew. So I explained to him that, horse races, how many times they run around the track? 4 times, 5 times? I mean, how long can it run at full speed? 5 times? Anyone know horse racing? 6 times? You know how many times the Jews have run around this track? Well, let's just do it 1 round per year. 3,336 laps around this track. Can you imagine? And now we're coming down the home stretch. And it's like one horse is just pulling itself by its front legs. Its back legs are already flat. You're going to complain about the Jews at this point of history? It's like we're just being kept here because of the Torah promises that at the end of days there's going to be this incredible showdown where the whole world, just like in Mitzrayim, the whole world's going to see the experience of Hashem. V'haisa Hashem amelucha, that everyone's going to see that Hashem's the Melech. And so when we were being McCarved in those days, we were thinking the whole time, this isn't for us. This is for the world. The world needs to know this. Our live stream ended here. Who's on the live stream? Borrow this for a second, please. The world needs to know this. So watch this. This is going to get crazy. Yaakov Avinu is injured. Yaakov Avinu is injured in the support of Torah. What happens when you lose the support of Torah? What happens when Torah is no longer being supported? Someone said you support yourself. That was a shocking comment. What happens when the Torah loses its support? So I want to share with you guys something. Have you noticed like things come in and like come in style and then they go out? Like things come in and then they go out and then something else comes in and goes out and then something bigger is built and then that's like everything and all the stuff that we thought was big is no longer big and then that goes out and then this comes in and then that goes out. There's an evolution. There's a dynamism to things. Leadership ossifies. Leadership calcifies. It hardens around itself. And it loses the dynamism of creation. This world is dynamic. It moves like this. And so the people on the streets have to trickle in. They're on the pulse of reality, the people on the streets. Do you guys know how many bands only had one good album, the first one? I mean, they had an album that went like platinum, like sold hundreds of millions of copies. And then what happened? Now they're in the big studio. And they're driving fancy Cadillac cars, smoking big cigars, and they do their second album in a big plush studio, and they put it out, and guess what? No one's interested in it. It bombs. And what happens? They lost their finger on the pulse. They aren't on a pulse anymore. And that's the beauty of rock bands, that were able to create music for a generation. And you'll notice the same bands that were able to get its second album today have 20 albums, 30 albums. Because they never lost their finger out on the pulse. They weren't going for the money. They were artists. Now, what happens is organizations are started by a leadership. That leadership is in the middle. He's got a structure wing over there. The people who are in the organization, they're the flow. But he's got a structure wing that helps keep the organization, the institution, the business, whatever it is. But what happens is they're afraid of the bottom. They're afraid that what could trickle up could be a revolution. What could trickle up could depose us. And so what happens is the power winds up calcifying at the top. And it loses its dynamism, and it's only a matter of time until they've completely lost the plot. Their industry will have other leaders that will overtake them. And in the Jewish world, what will happen is they'll just lose their support. The money disappears. The money just dries up for the organization. What would be the organization's job once the money dried up? Once the money dried up, the organization's job would be to reposition themselves to figure out what's the pulse we lost. We lost something. Something happened. We missed the pulse. And I remember this happening when internet came out. When internet came out, that was a challenge that seemed to perplex the Kiruv world. And when smartphones came out, it was over. That was it. It was over. And the repositioning that was necessary wasn't done. But so I spent the last, when were smartphones, 2007? Because very interesting, think about it. It was 40 years in the desert. 1967 to 2007 is 40 years. The 40 years in the desert ended then. Not one person showed up again with a backpack on, with long hair in the old city, to like find the truth. Not one more person did that except for maybe a few that were running from the law. Because what kind of idiot puts on a backpack and goes searching for truth when he's got it right? He can search absolutely anything in Google in the palm of his hand. The reason we weren't able to reposition ourselves, the reason we weren't able to get our finger on the pulse to reposition was it was never about us. It was about the world. It was about the planet, and we couldn't see that big, and we're scared of it. And we don't know what it would take to become an influencer there, because you got to be an disruptor. In the Jewish world, being disruptive is just not very appreciated. And so it really was about the bigger world. Meaning that hunch we had when they were McCarving us in the late 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2007. When they were McCarving us, we knew deep down this was a bigger picture. The world's listening, and all we seem to do is echo their own garbage. Esav got his cue that he can now build the infrastructure in the world, while Yisrael would build Torah, but then eventually there would be a nexus where the physical Hod would be filled with Netzach, and that's where Nevuah takes place. Nevuah is the connection of Netzach and Hod. That's the place of Nevuah. That's the place of prophecy. It's that bigger world that we have to reach, but we don't know how to do it because we're, first of all, from the secular world, we're embarrassed for being Jewish, and in the frum world, we're too afraid to be disruptive. Because the only way to get the attention of the world would be being disruptive. And one of the scary things is that it's brought down to, I hate to say this, but what happens is Torah institutions generally they might have a board. The board's usually made of the top donors. It's got its fundraisers. It's got its Rosh Hashiva, who's probably passed away, so now it's some structure guy. And what happens is they go after more money. They have to find money. And so guess what they can wind up doing? You ever heard the term Hanifa? Hanifa It's something that's forbidden, actually. It's one of the Isurim in Torah is to flatter someone who's gone against Torah. Like, you're not allowed to flatter someone who's going against the Torah, no matter what. Like, even it doesn't matter how much money he's got. You know, you can. What I mean by flatter, I mean in a Chil Hashem type of fashion. Meaning, if you meet the guy in his home, you can be as nice as you want. You know, get the check. But once it's going a little more public, your relationship with them, then you have to be very careful of that. But it's brought down. You ready for this? It's crazy, but it's brought down that you might wind up going to where the money is and letting them guide. Meaning, what do they want to see your institution be? What do the money people want to see? So now it's like so removed, it's ridiculous. You have, it went from a Rosh Hashiva who's right down the middle, or a Rebbe who's right down the middle, to, okay, he passes away. Now you got the structure people trying to figure it all out. But then what happens is they lose the plot altogether because they don't have their finger on the pulse. They can't sell another album. No one's showing up, and in this case, in the Kiruv world, it was internet and then smartphones. No one wants to buy anymore. Because the whole thing was not about us. We're convalescent horses who have been protected ultimately for the Yom Tov Mashiach to see Milchemes Mashiach. And to be here so that there's Jews at the end of the days. We're in a very special generation. We're very lucky to be here. None of us merited it. We're all the biggest troublemakers in the world. But we're here. And you know, there's a famous line that at the end of days, Mashiach's going to come, and all the Frum Yidden are going to be running to the mikvahs, like there's going to be a line this long out the mikvahs. Arizal's mikvah is going to be a big line. Everyone's trying to get the mikvah. Then they're all looking for the big day Shabbos, getting on the shtreim, like making their pays just right. All the women are putting on their finest. Meanwhile, the Chilonim, the secular Israelis, they just went straight to Beis HaMikdash. They showed up in tank tops and shorts. And they're dancing with Mashiach. Mashiach's like, you know, everyone's dancing around, and it's like Mashiach came, and it's like this whole party going on for like hours. Finally, like all the Haredim coming in buses, you know. And the Mashiach looks over at all these people in these funny hats, and the Mashiach says to the Chiloni, who are they? Oh, they're also Jewish.
But it's true. It's true.
The final hammer blow of a Torah institution is where the money starts telling us what we should be doing. Where the money's in charge. That's it. You're dead at that point, you know. Who are those guys anyway, you know? Who are those guys? They're our leaders. They're the Torah leaders. But when Esav's leg gets injured, when Esav's legs gets injured, then the Torah has to go find more funds. But that's not the way. It's not the way. The way is that you need to wake up and get your finger back on the pulse of what is Klal Yisrael here to do. What are we here for? What is this all about? And that's what this day is all about. This day is all about this revolution, and the revolution comes from within. The revolution is the inner Torah. The revolution is the emes of Torah. There's Torah, and then there's the emes of Torah, which is, it's a wild animal. It's untamable. And it speaks to the flow. It speaks to the netzach. It speaks to the creativity of every individual. It's water. Torah's water. It's not the structure. It's not the cup. Torah's meshula to mayim. Louder?
And the written Torah is like the structure.
Yeah. Well, it's got plenty of that, but even the written Torah has 70 explanations in every word. You start to realize how exponential the Torah is. Not to mention the fact that the white between the black letters is its own Torah. Why do you think two letters touching is puzzles of Torah? Because it got in the way of the white. Got in the way of the white Torah. So being born and raised in the fire of Torah, Esha Torah, on the yortzeit of my Rebbe, I know that I'll speak to him directly. Rav Noach, if you can hear me, I'm so embarrassed as your Talmud, and all of us are so embarrassed. You're probably doing, and they say people are like flipping over in their graves. You're probably doing backflips. All kinds of somersaults, watching your students and we're all so brainwashed at this point, from all the years with you. We're all so brainwashed at this point of, just completely like given over to help Klal Yisrael. It's so inside of us, but none of us really understood what this was about. This is about the planet, and we haven't stepped up. We haven't done our job, and we've taken this Yerusha and misused it. We've misused it and we've underused it radically. And I really believe that we need to create a revolution for Klal Yisrael. We need to create a revolution. I think that every donor who's ever given a penny to any kiruv institution in the world needs to demand that we finally wake up and get busy with what we're here for. And we are here to make a Kiddush Hashem on this planet. We are here to teach the world. The world's waiting to hear from us. And no one's got a better mouthpiece than the people who were raised in the Esav world, who have found their way to Torah and know both worlds well and can articulate things that no one else seems to be able to. I think a big tshuva would be for all the rich people who gave money to anything in kiruv. The tshuva you could do is the tshuva of having even tried to influence it. Tried to influence this wild animal. Tried to influence the where we're supposed to go with things. The tshuva you could do is to demand that we start a revolution and that we get this done right. The world's waiting for us. I've heard it said about the weight of the world's problems. It's enough to make the ball fall right through space. This planet is falling apart, and it's getting more and more intense. As you all know, things are just getting more and more intense. This is hardball now. I don't know, before Corona, I think God was playing softball, but now it's hardball. We're playing hardball, and we've blown it badly. And I don't know if I'm speaking to rich people who already gave up all their money for this, and it's too late now. Doesn't mean you can't demand it, because you gave it. And if you got any money left, make sure it's going towards a revolution. It's enough already. It's enough. And Baruch Hashem, just the last thing I want to say is thank God. Thank God. And thank you, Hashem, for the people learning Torah. For the people who are just simple people. Because deep down, you know how they always told us they're the ones keeping the world going? Well, we're all running around trying to change it. In the end, all of us trying to change it are a bunch of idiots, and they're keeping the world going. The people who are sitting and learning are keeping the world going. The humble people sitting and learning Torah intensely. All the people sitting in Kollel instead of making a living. All the people sitting in Sfas. All the people learning Kabbalah in little secret Kollels. They're the ones keeping the world going, while all of us saying we're going to change the world. We haven't done a thing. We failed miserably. And the reason we failed was only because we just can't set our sights big enough, high enough to do what we're here to do, the big job. And so we could have a partnership with all those who are willing to sit and learn, who have that ability. We could have a partnership. Let them sit and learn and hold down the keep us grounded, like keep us like nice involved in the essence of reality, which is Torah, and all the knuckleheads that I get to hang out with here in Yerushalayim, and plenty of good ones in Sfas too, and all around the world, and Lakewood and Muncie and Brooklyn and the five towns and LA and all the other out of town places, like the ones who are the biggest knuckleheads who want to go run around and make a splash. Well, let's get together and start figuring out how to do this right, because it's not, in the end, it's not about us. This is about Kiddush Hashem. Hashem created this whole damn thing for him, for his glory, and that glory is only going to shine through when it's to the whole world. Not a localized Egypt exodus. It's not a localized thing. Hashem doesn't go for localized things. And you notice when he went for the localized one, he managed to have 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, until everyone who at least lived in this region had sold themselves to power. He likes big. God likes big stuff. But now it's planetary. We're a global village. He wants to take the whole planet. But the Netzach of Yisrael has to come and infuse that hod of Esav, this builder, and become the Rosh Pina, Even Maso Aboinim, the stone that the builders, Esav, hated, has to become the kingpin. It has to become the kingpin of the entire arch for Mashiach to come. May we be blessed to have the courage to fight this war. And if I offended anybody, I've done my job. Thank you very much.